she took one last breath, and I knew in that moment that she was gone. Losing a child is something that no parent should ever have to go through. The children are supposed to outlive you, and that's the way that it should be. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing my perspective on the loss of our first baby girl, Evelyn Rose. Laura already shared her side, and I wanted to just take time to share with you all my experience with preterm labor and losing a child. I hope that it will help someone out there to know that you're not alone, though it is a really hard thing to lose a child. I think that it's something that you never really go back to being the same afterwards, but you definitely can get through it, and you can continue to move forward even though that you have lost that loved one. Losing a child is something that no parent should ever have to go through. The children are supposed to outlive you, and that's the way that it should be. It's a very difficult and unique thing to pass through, and I just hope that those who are watching this will be able to empathize a little bit with those who have lost a child, or perhaps to give hope to those who have lost a child. So we lost our Evelyn Rose in February of 2020. She was born on the 17th. We went to the hospital on Valentine's Day, so February 14th. Laura had some bleeding and she was nervous, so we decided to go into the hospital and get everything checked out. I was really expecting that we would just go in, that they would check her, that everything would be fine, and that we would be able to come home. But when we got to the doctor's office, they did some checks, and then the nurse took a little bit of time to do those checks, and then she said that she needed to get a second opinion, so she brought in another nurse, and that is when they said that they couldn't find Laura's cervix and that there was a water sac bulging out. It was a lot to process. We didn't know what that meant at first, and I just remember that I felt a whole bunch of different emotions. I felt fear, worry, I felt confused. I just didn't know what was going on and didn't know what to think at the time. Laura was almost 21 weeks pregnant, and at that point the baby just isn't able to live. They need to make it at least 24 weeks to be able to be viable, is what they call it. This was our first pregnancy. Laura got pregnant a few months after we were married, and we were super excited to be able to start our own family, to have kids. I remember all the things that Laura took a pregnancy test, and then she made a big deal. She went out and bought some baby clothes to announce it to me, and I remember that when I came home I was just starting on making dinner, and Laura just kept trying to get me to go into the bathroom, and I was like, I can wash my hands here in the kitchen, and she was like, but come wash your hands in the bathroom. And then finally I made my way into the bathroom. I think she had to tell me that one of the lights was broken or something. So she got me in there, and I saw the baby clothes, and I was really excited to find out that she was pregnant, and I was just really excited to start growing our family, to have a child. Laura was sick the whole pregnancy. She was throwing up in the mornings. She didn't really have an appetite. She said that she was just barely starting to feel better a couple weeks before the baby was born. It was difficult that she went through all of that pain and suffering, and then at the end we didn't get to have a successful pregnancy. So after the nurses went away, it was pretty late at night, and we decided to try and just take that information, get some rest. Laura was having some contractions, so I was there to help her a little bit, but then that first night it seemed like after a couple hours they were kind of dying down. That gave both of us hope that we would be able to somehow resolve it. They did mention that if things went well, that they were able to relax and that we were able to stop the contractions. There was a small chance that we would be able to save our baby. They would be able to maybe push the water sac back in and put in a rescue stitch and help us to get further along where the baby would be viable. After a couple hours, Laura's contractions kind of started dying down, so I went over and slept on the couch, and Laura kind of slept in the bed. So that night was pretty uneventful. So Valentine's Day was on a Friday this year. We slept that night, and then come Saturday, the nurses were coming in and checking in on us. They came in and the situation was about the same. So even though Laura was feeling a little bit better that day, they told us that it didn't look any better, that it still looked like we were going to deliver and then lose our baby because it was too soon. At this time we had told our families, and luckily they were available and free. They came in and they were really supportive of us during this time. They came and brought us food in the hospital. They came and visited, stayed with us. They played some games. Laura's parents even came on Sunday and they stayed with Laura so that I could go and take a shower and then bring some stuff from home that we were missing, like toothbrushes and things that we hadn't packed because we thought we were just gonna go and get checked and be home and have that peace of mind, but that wasn't the case. The second night, Laura was contracting a little bit more, and I didn't know that was going to happen, so I was just sleeping on the couch. And then I'm a pretty deep sleeper and could kind of sleep anywhere, and Laura told me in the morning that some of her contractions were so bad that she wanted to find something in the room to throw at me and wake me up and tell me to come do my job and support her while she was going through those hard contractions. So Sunday night I actually went and moved the couch right next to her bed so that I was there with her the whole night. I gave her my hand to squeeze, and sometimes I would give her some counter pressure on her back to help try and relieve the pressure, because that was something that Laura's mom had said helped her when she was giving birth. So that was something that we did. We really didn't have a whole lot of training around delivery at this time because we weren't expecting to deliver. We thought we had another 20 weeks to prepare. It kind of took us by surprise, and I feel like I wasn't very supportive at that time as a husband, but I did my best to try and be there for her, give her my hand to squeeze, and to give her that counter pressure on her back when she needed it. So after that hard night, Monday morning came and Laura was having really strong contractions that were close together. So we told the nurse, and the nurse called the doctor in. He came in at 9:05 and then he checked Laura and he said, okay, I think it's time to push. So he got ready. It took him about 15 minutes to get everything ready for the delivery, and then Laura started pushing. At that time, I think that's when the reality hit me that we were about to deliver and then lose our baby because it was too early for her. And I just felt overwhelmed with grief and pain that we were going to lose our baby. Then the doctor came in, he was ready, and he helped Laura get all set, and she started pushing. Laura's amniotic sac was still intact when she was pushing, so they were trying to have Laura deliver the whole amniotic sac. It only took 9 minutes for the baby to come, and during the final push, Laura's sac popped and fluid went everywhere and got a little bit on the doctors and nurses that were nearby, and then the baby just came right out with the fluid in a gush. And then the doctor hurried and snipped the umbilical cord and handed her to Laura because they didn't know how much time she would live. So they wanted to give us as much time as possible with the baby. I had a really strong feeling that she was a girl. I had that throughout the whole pregnancy. We didn't get to find out the gender before she was born. They had a ultrasound scheduled to find out the gender at 21 weeks, but she was born a few days before that. When she was delivered, the doctor did say, "Oh, it's a boy," and then I kind of looked confused, and I think the nurse caught onto that, and then she looked and said, "No, I think it's actually a girl." Then the doctor double checked and said, "Oh, it actually is a girl." So I think that was one of the connections that I felt like I had with our daughter before she was born. Laura got to do skin to skin right away. It was so neat to see Laura as a mother there with the child that I was seeing for the first time. And immediately I noticed that she had a lot of features of Laura's. You could tell in her face. Her eyes were still fused shut because they hadn't developed fully, but I could tell that she had Laura's nose and ears. She was just such a perfect little body. It was just like a miniature person, and I was surprised that they were so developed at that time. I just had Laura's app to go off of where it said that, "Oh, your baby's the size of a cantaloupe today," and so I didn't know what to expect, but it was amazing how perfect her little body was. Everybody who came later and to support us and to see the baby just mentioned that she had the most perfect body. That was the best word that people had to describe her, because it was just looked so developed and so human, that more so than I would have expected. Her skin was still translucent, but she was very developed. It was nice to see that she had Laura's nose, and then she had some of my features. I think she had my long hands and my long feet as well. I think that she definitely had some of both of our traits there. It's difficult for men to be able to bond with the baby before it's born. We don't get to have it inside of us. We don't get to feel it as early. Evelyn wasn't big enough for us to be able to feel it from the outside. Laura did say that she was able to feel it, but I was never able to place my hand and feel it kicking or squirming like I was my other children. But as soon as Evelyn was born, I was able to feel a really strong connection with her. I just felt like she was my daughter, and that's something that, even though she was only alive for an hour and a half, I'm glad that I was able to see that and feel that, and there was just an immediate connection when I held her that I knew that she was mine. The doctor said that we'd probably only have like 10 to 30 minutes with her before she passed away, so they wanted to give us as much time with her as possible, but she ended up living 1.5 hours, and during that time, Laura and I just took turns holding her, and it was nice to see Laura, but at the same time there were so many emotions going around. It was so heartbreaking and sad to see that our baby wasn't going to make it. We felt so much grief that it was just a lot of tears were shed that day. And there was still some blessings that we were able to have her alive with us for 1.5 hours, that we were able to deliver her on Labor Day and right before COVID, so our families were able to come and support us. We had both of our parents and siblings there with us inside of the hospital. They would take turns, and some would be out in the waiting room and some would be there with us. It was nice to have that support there with us that whole time. It was a blessing that we were able to deliver her on Labor Day and to have family so close that day. Another thing that we found out later that was cool is we had chosen the name Evelyn if it was a girl, and we knew that no matter what, if it was a girl, it was going to be Evelyn. We didn't know that the name meant wished for child until after we had delivered our baby, so that was another thing that I thought was cool, that it was just unique experience to have picked a name that beforehand that kind of signified that she was going to be lost. Evelyn's lungs weren't fully developed, but while she was alive, it was nice to be able to see her breathe every once in a while, probably about every 2 minutes. She would just take a big breath. She would just go. And I just felt so close to her when she did that. It was just like we were breathing the same air, and there was just a feeling that I can't explain that just brought me so close to my child in that time, that she was there and alive with us. There was a time when it was my turn to hold her, and she took one last breath, and I knew in that moment that she was gone. I was just filled with so much sadness to know that she was gone, that there was no more life in her. And soon after that happened, the nurse came in and she confirmed that there was no more heartbeat, that our baby had passed away. After she passed away, the nurse came in and did some of the measurements like height and weight, and then she let us give her a little bath and then put some clothes on her and take some pictures. That was a little neat experience that Laura and I had. We had our family leave the room and it was just us, and we had some time to grieve over our child and just be with her body. We were able to go in and they took little molds of her hands and feet that we were able to keep. It's nice to have those cast molds because now we have something to remember her by. Before the baby was born, some of the nurses had talked to us about some funeral options for our baby. They said that a lot of people like to just take their baby and have them cremated so that they can keep the ashes and have that part of them with them. And Laura and I had talked a little bit about it, and we had thought that maybe we might want to do that as well, just a cremation for our baby. But after spending the time with her, we wanted to do something more. So we decided that we wanted to do a funeral service. We had a family member who had a half plot in a cemetery nearby that we were able to use, and so we were able to use that. And then we reached out to a mortuary who helps with people who have had preterm babies die, and they were able to provide the funeral services for us at no charge. So we waited a couple days, and then we had that funeral service. We were able to bury her in a cemetery nearby so that we can go and visit her grave whenever we'd like. Life will never be the same. Nobody should have to have a child die. Nobody should have to have a baby die in their arms and watch them take their last breath as they pass on. Our lives will never be the same. We have a daughter along with our 2 sons, and Laura and I are never going to forget that. Some people think that, oh, you can move on, you can go back to life being normal how it was before, but that's not the case. We knew that even though we have other children now, that she is our daughter. She changed our life. We like to make sure we remember her when we talk about all of our children, because she's still a part of us and a part of who we are. Some people say that when you have another child that the grief and the pain will start to go away, but I don't think that it ever truly goes away. you always have that piece of you that you just feel like is missing because you don't have that child here with you. But with the support of family and being able to have time to grieve, we have been able to finally come at peace with it. We will never forget that she is our daughter, but we also are able to enjoy life. We're not still feeling that overwhelming sense of grief that was with us for a very long time. One thing that I think was helpful for me was that people would come and they would talk to us, and you always expect them to come and talk to Laura, who delivered the baby, who carried the baby for almost 21 weeks, and ask how she is doing. But I really appreciated it when people would come and they would ask me how I was doing too. While I don't always open up and share everything with people, it was really nice to be able to know that people cared about me too, that they wanted me to be happy and they cared to know how I was doing, to give me a chance to talk out my feelings with them. I often find myself thinking, what would it be like if she was still here with us? She would be over 3 years old now. It would be interesting to see what it would be like to have a little girl running around with our 2 boys. I often think about that and the joys that we're missing out on of not having her here with us. If you are going through a similar loss, please make sure that you have a support group to be there for you. Make sure that you have people who can help you get through this, because it is not easy. But as you surround yourself with people who love you, you will make it through. You will be able to come to peace with it eventually. While there is nothing that can replace your baby, and you should not try to find ways to just get over it and get through it, it is important that you make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Surround yourself with good people who love and support you, and they will help you through it.